Coming up on today's issue of Marketing Matters, we'll be talking about community-supported agriculture, better known as CSAs. So stay tuned. Hello, I'm Christie Welch, and welcome to our edition of Marketing Matters. Today, we're going to be talking about community-supported agriculture, or CSAs, as they have been known for a number of years. It's been really interesting to watch the growth of those over the last couple of decades. And so today, we're going to talk about where they've been, how they started, and where we think they're going to go in the future. And I'm happy to be here with Patrick Dengel. Patrick, good to see you.
It's great being here. I learned a great deal of information from you on Marketing Matters. And I know that you have mentioned several times the CSA, and I'm interested in finding out more about it.
Well, great, Patrick. I'm glad you asked. CSAs are what were originally known as community-supported agriculture. Started quite a few decades ago. And the reason they started was really to help customers share the risk with the farmer. As we know, especially here in Ohio, you have to buy inputs. You have to have seeds, plants, fertilizer, labor, equipment, all those kinds of things to be able to grow a crop. And so what had happened here a number of decades ago is because farmers have to put so much capital in before they even have a crop to grow, it can be really hard on their cash flow. And so community-supported agriculture, again, was started. And what happened was consumers would buy a share of the produce that would be grown on that farm. And so they would pay for their share before the season started, which helped the producer get the funds they needed to buy the seeds, the plants, and all those input costs. And then as the crop was grown, they would get a weekly share of whatever was produced on the farm that year. And so the reason that was helpful was because if there was some kind of an event, an early spring freeze, and you lost a crop or a flood or those kinds of things, the farmers still had gotten their payment from the consumer, which really helped take some of those peaks and valleys out of the risk of farming. And so that's kind of the original purpose of CSAs, or community-supported agriculture.
Now, do you have to have a certain acreage of farm to participate in this? Can you have as little as 1 acre or less?
Oh yeah, you can have as little or as much as you want. We have some actually urban CSAs, urban farms that do CSAs here throughout Ohio. And so they may have 12 shares that they sell a year. And then we have some larger farms that have maybe 400 shares that they sell a year. So it's a good model for different situations. And something that farmers can certainly look at to see if it makes a fit for their farm.
So let's suppose I purchase a share. Roughly, does it matter which crop, how much it's going to cost?
That's a great question, Patrick. And so one of the things that's key with successful CSAs, and nowadays a lot of times we think of this as a subscription to what's grown on the farm. Typically, the customer that buys that subscription gets a weekly share of what's grown on the farm. Most of the CSAs that I'm familiar with are vegetables and fruits. And so as the growing season changes throughout Ohio, that will change what you get in your weekly share. So, when we get into the early spring, we're looking at leafy greens and those cool season crops. And then when we get more into the peak growing season, like now, you'll have tomatoes and sweet corn and all those things that go around with that. And then as we go farther into fall, those more durable things like potatoes, winter squashes, and those kinds of things. So one of the keys to running a successful CSA is to make sure that you plan what you're going to plant throughout the season so that you have a variety of things in your box.
So let's suppose I know some individuals that grow strawberries, and so they are doing the shared, and I buy a share. Um, let's suppose that the individuals that are growing strawberries have 10 acres. I would own a portion of that acreage, or I would participate only in the amount of money that is received.
So really neither. What you own is a share of the crop that is produced.
I see.
So based on your subscription, you will get X amount of produce per week, every other week, once a month. It really depends on how the farm sets it up. So it's not that you own the farm, it's you own the product that is produced on that farm. And again, by sharing the risk, if there's a crop failure and you've already paid for it, you absorb that crop failure. You don't get a refund on that money. Again, a way to help manage the risk for farmers. I would say nowadays, especially post-pandemic, where the demand for subscription agriculture has really gone through the roof almost. I mean, we've talked to a lot of CSA operators that sold out. Let's say I'm a farm and I can say I can service 200 customers a season. I've sold all 200 shares. I don't have more produce to sell more shares. We've talked to a lot of folks that have waiting lists for their CSAs here post-pandemic. And so you pay a certain amount for that share, you get a certain amount of produce again on a weekly basis for that investment.
Let's say strawberries. Would I have to do the picking of the strawberries then?
That's a great question. And no, usually no. So
Okay.
you pay your subscription for the produce that comes off of that acreage, and then you either pick up your weekly box at the farm, at a
I see.
farmer's market. It's delivered to a specific location. There are even a few that are delivering directly to the home. And so, no, you don't need to do the actual labor part of the production. You just get to enjoy the benefits and help manage the risk for the farmers.
So I would imagine that either I would consume those products or I would be selling them to retailers.
So you usually wouldn't be selling them. CSAs usually serve individual consumers. So that is produce or food, local food that you would consume yourself.
Oh, okay.
And so that's a great question. One of the things that successful CSAs regularly do is include recipes, because if we're not familiar with kale, here are some things that you do with kale. This is how you store it. This is how you clean it. This is how you prepare it. This is how you consume it. When we get into some of the winter squashes, a lot of people might not be familiar with how to prepare those things as well. So to include those recipes based on the products that are in the box that week really go a long way to help you be more successful, to help your customers know what to do with some of those things.
I'm curious, how then does the farmer make money? If they've sold all these subscriptions and they're giving away all their products, hopefully the farmers are making money.
Hopefully, for sure that they are. And again, that's kind of why the CSA model came about, was the customer will pay for their subscription usually before the season begins, although every farm maybe is different and you pay weekly based on your subscription, or you pay monthly. So the farmer gets that money and then delivers the value of that produce to the customers to enjoy. Yeah.
I would imagine that during the pandemic, the COVID-19, Has that created major problems for CSAs?
So I wouldn't say that it created major problems. I will say that it certainly increased the demand by consumers for access to CSAs. If we remember a year ago, March, when the pandemic first really hit the United States, and we started shutting businesses and organizations around across the state and the country, people didn't want to go shop in a grocery store in person. People had questions about the safety of the food that they were consuming and all those health issues that the pandemic raised. And so the demand by consumers to be able to get their box of fresh, locally prepared food from their local farmer really increased. And we had a lot of farmers that sold out the amount of subscriptions that they had. But from the consumer side, they knew that they were getting local food, usually from a farmer that they knew. And there was a contactless pickup or delivery option for that CSA box. So the customer didn't have to go in the grocery store. They didn't have to go in the farm market or the farmer's market. They picked up their box and then took that home. Patrick, you're raising a lot of really good questions about CSAs or community supported agriculture. And we've been hearing those questions from folks around the state. And so we have put together a conference that's focused on CSAs, community supported agriculture, and it is the Tri-State Region CSA Conference Thinking Inside the Box, where we'll be talking about all the skills and knowledge that producers need to have to put local foods in a box for their consumers. And so we're excited to have that conference coming up here in October.
And can anyone register, and is there a cost to this?
Absolutely, anyone can register. The registration fee is $75 per person, and the conference starts October 24th at 3:00 in the afternoon and runs through the next Monday, October 25th until 4:30. And so we have 2 tracks of sessions that will be available for attendees. One that's geared more for that kind of small or new and beginning CSA operator. And then the second track focuses more a little bit on those CSA operations that have been around for a number of years but are looking to grow to the next level. We will have dinner Sunday and breakfast and lunch Monday, all local foods that we're happy to be able to share with our attendees of that conference. And so anybody can register.
And will you be holding virtual programs also, or do you have to be in person?
Another good question, Patrick. At this point, we are planning for in person. Now, as we know, things can change daily. And so I would just encourage folks to be sure to check out the website for additional information and updated information if that would change. go.osu.edu/2021 CSA conference.
So the conference, you said that there are 2 tracks. What's the difference between track 1 and track 2?
Good question, Patrick. So the one track, we're really looking at focusing the information on those folks that are new or have only been offering a CSA for a couple of years and want to really learn more about how to improve their operation and grow their CSA shares. The second track is really for those folks that have been doing CSAs for a while and hearing from other CSA producers on some of the things that have worked well for them. And so we'll have marketing topics, we'll have succession planting topics, again, how important it is to make sure that you have a crop all season long. We'll have a couple of producer panels. We have a couple of keynote presenters on Sunday. Dan Perkins with Perkins Good Earth Farm will be the keynote presenter, and he's been doing CSAs for a long time. So we're really excited to hear from him. And then on Monday, our keynote presenter is Terry Neerman, And I'm sorry, I probably said her name wrong, but she's managed CSAs for a lot of years too. And so we'll hear from her about best marketing practices and customer retention. So because this is a subscription service, retaining your customers from year to year can be really important and critical to maintain your CSA. And so we're excited to hear that information as well.
I think that's very great. Now, is CSAs just geared towards produce, fruits, and vegetables?
Another great question, Patrick. It used to be that, yeah, it was really focused on vegetables and some fruits. As consumer demand has increased, there are flour CSAs, there are meat CSAs, there are multi-farm CSAs. So I grow the produce, I grow the meat, maybe there's milk, maybe there's cheese, maybe there's honey, maple syrup. So again, when we think about operating a CSA, we have to keep in mind, what is it our customers want? And then we can't be all things to everyone, but how can we collaborate with other farmers to offer a more complete local food box weekly to our customers?
And in order to join the CSA, do I need to do anything on a legal basis, or can I just join the organization and start selling subscriptions?
So as a producer, you run your own CSA. So you would set up what your schedule is. You would say, this is what we anticipate to be in our box every week. This is the price that we're going to charge for a weekly box, or here's the fee for the season. I will say that most CSA subscriptions, people sell those in January and February, so they can do their planning and understand how much demand are they going to have for their product on their farm. So they can make sure that they have the proper seeds and put that plan in place for making sure that they do everything they can to have produce all throughout the season for their customers.
So it sounds like this is a pre-selling your produce or meats or vegetables or whatever. Has this been going on for a long time?
It has been around for a number of decades. I'd say at least 30 years, if not longer, Patrick. And again, the original intent was that pre-selling, so that the producer could have access or have that customer cash before the season started to purchase inputs, to help manage that risk. Again, if there was a crop failure, a customer shared in the failure. So maybe you had an issue with your tomatoes and you were expecting to get 5 pounds of tomatoes a week, and the tomatoes didn't do well, and you got a tomato a week. In that sense, again, the customer shared in that risk, and they did not get any kind of a refund based on a crop failure. Again, I would say it's more, in my opinion now, it's more about making sure that customers get that local food that they're demanding, to help the producer manage their cash flow. And not always do they pay up, not always does a customer pay up front. Sometimes they pay weekly. It really depends on the producer and what works best for them and their customers.
It's interesting. I've noticed in the different seasons in growing that there are certain produce that occur in a very short period of time, like tomatoes. Next thing I know, on our back porch, one of our neighbors have left about 20 or 30 different tomatoes. I go into work and somebody is giving away tomatoes. Does that become a problem with subscriptions?
I don't think so, Patrick. As long as, I will say this, customers like variety. They don't want to have waste. That's a big issue right now, especially with the younger generation, reducing food waste. So if you can manage how you plant to make sure that you have certain amount every week to go in that box, And then I think it comes back again to making, whether you do a newsletter to your subscribers or you actually put a recipe physically in that produce box to help people understand how to store product, what to do with it. And, we're all so busy. So if we can create short, simple, healthy recipes, that can help your customer be more successful. So when we talk about tomatoes, a lot of things we can do is take those tomatoes and turn them into salsa. So I've got tomatoes, I've got an onion, I've got some garlic, I've got whatever herbs I might need. Here's a recipe, and you can either make salsa fresh, or hey, if you want to preserve some of it, here's resources to help you do that as well.
Oh, that's interesting. One other question. In acquiring a subscription, can I indicate to the person selling the subscription that I only want 7 tomatoes per week? Or in buying the share, it really is up to the farmer to determine what amount of product I'm going to get?
So it depends. So some producers say, this is a box, you'll get this box every week. And that's what you get. Some are trying to be more flexible and more responsive again to consumers and say, so if you don't like kale, when you subscribe to our CSA, there's a box that say, these are the products I don't like. Are you willing to try new things? So patty pan squash is one that we see a lot in the fall. Well, most people don't know what a patty pan squash is or what to do with it. And so to get as much feedback from your customers as possible, again, so they're satisfied. You don't want customers getting a box of produce from the farm every week. They don't know what to do with it. And so they end up throwing part of that away because it goes bad, or they're giving it away. So again, that customer feedback to help both of you be successful with what they're getting is really, really important.
So those farmers really need to do some pre-planning before they sell the subscriptions, because they really have a good understanding and an idea what they're going to be able to yield as far as fruits and vegetables.
That's a very good point. It does take a lot of planning, Patrick. Not only what crops you're going to grow, but how often are you going to have to plant lettuce, sweet corn, tomatoes, all those kinds of things. What's that schedule going to look like throughout the season? And so, because, in May, we're not going to have sweet corn to put in that box, but we might have strawberries to put in that box. So the other part is to educate your customers on how that produce will change throughout the season as they get their weekly box is really important as well. And so one of the things that we're hoping with the CSA conference again is to provide that information and education to CSA operators across the Tri-State area on what is working for other producers. Here's some tools that can help you plan and manage your farm to do a successful CSA.
And so that conference is primarily geared toward those farmers, those producers, but also individuals that are interested in buying the subscriptions.
The conference is really geared more for the producers and the farmers, not so much the customers at this point. We are really trying to help our local food producers explore CSA to see if it is an option for their farm, or again, maybe if they've been doing it for a couple of years and they've decided they want to scale up and be able to do more subscriptions annually. That's really kind of the gist of this particular conference, is for those producers that are interested in operating CSAs.
Do you see the farmers having multiple crops, or do you see a number of different farmers just selling corn or soybean?
For CSAs, it has to be multiple crops. Again, you want to be able to supply a weekly box of local produce. Typically, it can be other items as well, typically produce across the season. So that comes back to, as we begin and look at the growing season, what items grow in what months. We also have a lot of operators that are using high tunnels and hoop houses to extend their season. So we have some CSAs around the state that are able to offer a weekly box almost 52 weeks out of the year.
Do you encourage the farmers, the CSAs, to work together?
I think
Or
it's certainly an opportunity for them to work together. Again, it depends on their customers and what their customers want. Do they want simply produce? Do they want some proteins like meats? Do they want dairy products? Some even include flour. So it really is knowing your customer, knowing what they want, and keeping them happy is really key to the CSAs.
the conference that's coming up in October, is there pre-registration? What is the registration date?
So you do need to register for the conference, and registration is open now. I can't remember, I'm sorry, I can't remember the date of the closing of registration, but we can certainly, if you go to that registration link, you can find that information. $75 a person again, which covers meals for Sunday and Monday. And again, we're so excited to be able to have local food being served throughout the conference, and then hearing from a great number of speakers, a lot of which are CSA operators.
And I would imagine that some discussion on marketing new customers is part of the conference.
Absolutely. Our keynote presenter then on Monday is really going to focus again on marketing practices that work to help not only attract but retain those CSA customers. So we're really excited to hear about that, as well as a number of other issues that are important to CSA operators.
Well, I think the conference is going to be very good. We're talking with Christie Welch. Christie Welch is a direct food agricultural marketing specialist with The Ohio State University. Christie, it's always a pleasure the way you help Ohio farmers and outside of Ohio with really good information. So thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. It's always a pleasure to be here.